Well, One America has kindled forward caught up with lawmakers from both parties who say they support the U.S. airstrikes in Syria. Here's more from Washington.
What's happening in Syria is a humanitarian disaster. It's the consequence of 8 years of Obama foreign policy failures, of American weakness, of red lines drawn imprudently and then not followed up on.
Come on, Ted Cruz, come on. Don't be like that. Don't be so partisan, okay? That's really disappointing. More like 16 years. It wasn't 8 years of Obama. To be fair, Obama worsened it, so you can say 8 years of foreign policy that was worse than the previous 8 years, but be honest, 16 years. 16 years is what you should really say. And if we are being completely honest, it's not just the last 16 years, okay? It's the 8 years through Obama. It's the 8 years of George W. Bush. It's the 8 years before that for Bill Clinton. The 4 years before that for the original George Bush. And I hate to say it, I love Ronald Reagan, but even 8 years of Ronald Reagan, and then 8 years previous, or no, it was 4 years. Anyway, Jimmy Carter before that. And this can date back all the way to World War II. Our foreign policy since World War II, including the Cold War, and even after the Cold War, is ultimately what led us here. So just don't play the partisan last 8 years under this Democratic administration of Obama. The foreign policy has been absolutely terrible. Don't do that, man. And it really disappoints me because I kind of like Ted Cruz. When it came to the Republican presidential primary, Rand Paul was number 1, and then Ted Cruz was number 2. If Rand Paul didn't get it, I wanted Ted Cruz to win against Donald Trump. If it wasn't Ted Cruz on the Democratic ticket, far-fetched, probably wouldn't have happened, but I was hoping for Jim Webb, although I knew it wouldn't happen. And then it went down to Austin Peterson or John McAfee of the Libertarian Party, and Donald Trump versus Hillary. I guess I would rather have Donald Trump. But come on, man, come on. Ted Cruz, you're disappointing me.
And Bashar Assad is a monster. He has used chemical weapons repeatedly on his own citizens. He has murdered innocent men, women, and children. We are seeing refugees flooding the entire Middle East, fleeing the chaos in Syria. And Syria right now is a puppet state of Russia and Iran. It is a profoundly dangerous circumstance. And so our prayers are certainly with the victims of Assad, who have been murdered by their leader. Our prayers are also with the victims of the ISIS terrorists, the al-Qaeda terrorists that are ripping Syria apart. And of course, our prayers are with the brave men and women in uniform who carried out this strike last night.
So I have to say something nice about Ted Cruz. I admire the guy. I love him. That's one reason why I love him. I'm not a religious person myself. I wouldn't say I'm an atheist. And no, I'm not dancing around declaring myself as an atheist for conservative religious viewers or anything. All 90 of you. No, I'm really not a religious person myself, but one of the great things about Ted Cruz, especially during his debate against Bernie Sanders, is his genuine display of either affection or sympathy. Whether it's true or not, he is a fellow Christian and he's a good guy.
Under the Constitution, the authority to declare war is given to Congress. And so I look forward to the President making the case to Congress, making the case to the American people as to what our military path should be going forward. The touchstone for military action should be protecting the vital national security interest of America. It would be profoundly contrary to our national security interest if chemical weapons fell into the hands of ISIS or al-Qaeda or other radical Islamic terrorists. And that, preventing that from occurring should be a central concern. There is long-standing authority for a commander-in-chief to react to exigent circumstances and to react with immediacy. And there's a difference between a specific strike in response to exigent circumstances and ongoing protracted military conflict. Protracted military conflict requires congressional authorization, but a commander-in-chief has long had the authority to react to a specific circumstance.
You see, Ted Cruz had me and then he lost me. He had me when he was talking about how Congress is the body of our government that declares war. They're the ones that decide whether or not troops touch down in the United States or in any country in any conflict. They're the ones that declare war, and it is unconstitutional for a president to declare war. The president can, as commander-in-chief, can make his case to Congress, and that's one of the things I respect about Ted Cruz. But when he said that the president has the authority to react to certain events or a declaration of war or something to protect the national security interests of the United States, I agree to an extent. I think if we are attacked, I think, say, I don't know, North Korea, right? They decide to fly a helicopter in and start, they just do something Red Dawn style, or they fly in a few vehicles and they try tearing shit up. To me, that is an appropriate time for a president like Donald Trump, even under Obama. I don't care who's president, whether it's somebody I wanted like Ron Paul, Austin Peterson, Rand Paul, even Ted Cruz, Jim Webb, anybody who I would have preferred as president, I would want them to react. If North Korea was attacking, we neutralize the threat and maybe attack back. But when an attack does not directly threaten the national security of the United States, that's where I have a problem. Donald Trump didn't react with an airstrike to something that happened to the U.S. It wasn't an attack on the U.S. Now, you could sit there and you could say, well, it was in the interests of the United States national security, because we have to protect it. Bullshit. Listen, I'm sympathetic. Chemical weapons should never be used by government on citizens, but it's not our job to police the world, and the attack was not on us, and it was unconstitutional. He wasn't reacting to an attack. That's where I draw the line. Now, if Congress, the way I think about it is Congress is the one that writes the warrant to go to war. Okay, Donald Trump is the police chief or whatever, and he wants to send police over to said neighborhood, but needs authorization from Congress to warrant it, if that makes sense. Unless, of course, the commander-in-chief in the neighborhood or the city that he's protecting, the country that he's protecting, is directly attacked, then he doesn't have any business going to that neighborhood. I hope I explained it. This is not scripted. I am speaking from my mind.
There are some in Congress who are pushing for very active U.S. military engagement in Syria. I think that would be a mistake.
Redemption! No, but seriously, that's a way to redeem yourself. He doesn't want an active, at least that's what he says, he doesn't want an active military presence in Syria. That would be a mistake. I guess we'll see as the test of time will prove whether or not he is being honest.
It's incumbent on the commander-in-chief to make the case for the military action, the military plan of action the administration proposes, and Congress will listen to what the commander-in-chief says. I hope both parties will listen with an open mind and assess the arguments as to how best to protect our national security interests. Part of the reason why the Constitution gives that authority to Congress is precisely so that the commander-in-chief will make the case and lay out a plan of action.